VenCat Newsroom. I'll hand over to François Picard for the debate. François.
Many thanks, Jessica Le Masurier in the newsroom. Now, it's my first day back. Anything happened while I was away? I tweeted as I walked in the door earlier. Well, here's a sample. Bruno Jambard wrote, nothing important, just that the Eurozone collapsed. While No Pasa said, yes, Greece reversed months of the hard work of others in a freezing cold New York minute. I guess he was tweeting there from New York City. Sounds like not everyone is a fan of George Papandreou's decision to stage a referendum on the painful medicine needed to keep Greece both afloat and inside the Eurozone. French daily newspaper Libération reminds us this Wednesday that we're talking about the land that gave us the word chaos. Chaos which threatens not just Greece, but the whole of Europe. Oh, and that French Riviera social gathering they call the Cannes G20 Summit. Already, thanks to his announcement, the Greek Prime Minister's earned himself an invite to Cannes for a sit-down with the leaders of France and Germany. Now, we'll know soon enough if it was bold or reckless to take the matter to Greek voters. And as lightning strikes the G20, we look at the knock-on effect for Europe and the rest of the world, who at this summit get front-row seats to what could well be a turning point for the Eurozone. With us for the France 24 debate, French Member of Parliament from the ruling Conservative UMP Party, Jacques Milliard.
Good evening.
Welcome, as always. Georges Prevaloukis, who teaches geopolitics at Paris's prestigious Sorbonne University. Ian Lesser of the German Marshall Fund, paying us a call, usually based in Brussels.
Exactly. Good evening.
Good evening. And Harold Howe teaches finance at the University of Geneva and the Swiss Finance Institute. Welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Now, you've, of course, been weighing in on the conversation on the France 24 Debate Facebook page. We'll be looking at some of your remarks in a moment. The exact wording of Greece's referendum has not been publicly unveiled. We have gotten, however, the Reuters news agency quoting an unnamed government spokesman as saying it will ask voters about the bailout deal, not about the membership inside the Eurozone. Whatever is on paper, George Prevaloukis, is it fair to say that it'll boil down to do you or do you not want to stay in the euro, even if the question is something else?
I think this question is quite obvious. I mean, everybody would say yes, of course, but the question is how and why. But we have to understand why this referendum issue came on the surface. And there we find ourselves in front of the famous principle that politics are local. But of course, the consequences are global. I think it's a struggle for influence, for power, for the future inside the Socialist Party.
So George Papandreou fighting for his own political survival.
Survival, not only survival as the Prime Minister of the country, but also survival as the leader of his own party. Because what is happening is that the social crisis and the political crisis and the hostility towards the government is such, and it is growing very rapidly, that I understand that the members of the Socialist Party are afraid that they will be completely not only disappear politically, but even that they will not be able, if they remain in power, if Papandreou continues to run the country, that they will have difficulty even to live in Greece.
So they feel threatened.
They want him out, and Papandreou wants, of course, to keep what he considers as a family property.
All right, and we know that the timeline of this is that on Friday there should be sometime in the afternoon, Athens time, maybe the evening, a vote of confidence for or against the current government. We know there's like somewhere in the neighborhood of a 3-seat majority. We can go to Cannes now and join France 24 business editor Marcus Carlson, who's been following this slow-motion car crash from the outset. Now, that's the timeline for Friday. Let's talk about the timeline for today, Marcus. Again, we've been getting word that the Greek referendum could ask voters about the bailout deal, not about euro membership. When is that sit-down with the German Chancellor and the French President?
Well, we're expecting that sit down with the Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou and Angela Merkel, as well as Nicolas Sarkozy, as well as Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, to take place in the next few hours or so. What we do know so far is that Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy, Christine Lagarde, and Mario Draghi, the head of the ECB, they've been trying to get on the same page, if you will. They've been trying to agree what message to bring Papandreou this evening. You can imagine that it's very important for them to come with a strong message to George Papandreou to give him a clear indication of what they want him to do at this stage.
All right, and we can listen, in fact, Marcus, to the German Chancellor earlier in the day reiterating what the French president had said on Tuesday, which is, in effect, if you are saying that this announcement of a referendum is a way to renegotiate the terms of last Wednesday's deal, forget about it.
We agreed on a plan for Greece last week, and as far as the European Union is concerned, we want to put this plan into practice. But for this, we need clarity, and the meeting tonight should help with precisely that.
So, Marcus, just very briefly, someone's talked themselves into a corner here. Either it's the German Chancellor and the French President, or it's the Greek Prime Minister.
Well, here the feeling is that it certainly is the Greek Prime Minister who's talked himself into a corner, giving himself no leeway to backtrack, if you will. The feeling is that the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to the Greek referendum. He can't really turn around at this stage and tell his people that, actually, no, we won't go ahead with this referendum. So as I say, the feeling here is certainly that it is the Greek Prime Minister who's painted himself into a corner, and it is he who will be under some increasing pressure here tonight.
All right, we'll check in with you a little bit later. France 24 business editor Marcus Carlson in Cannes, where the G20 summit is about to take place, as well as that meeting with the Greek Prime Minister. Of course, Harold Howe, there is this €8 billion carrot that Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy can dangle in front of the Greek Prime Minister as well, because they need that money, and that's due for some time in the coming month, isn't it?
But I mean, as the crisis unfolds, these political situations become less and less controllable from the outside. We should have no illusions about the ability of Sarkozy and Angela Merkel to control the internal events of Greece. I think they've been in a state of delusion over the last month, and now this referendum, this call for a referendum, is hopefully a wake-up call to put the European politics on a more realistic basis, and that means that Greece has to default, and possibly that we need to have an exit of Greece out of the Eurozone.
Ian Lesser, the referendum, some say that this is the right conversation to have, but just the wrong time.
It's also it's a question of what the referendum will be about. I mean, if the referendum is simply about Greece staying in the euro, or do you approve of austerity or not, well, then I think all bets are off. The referendum probably should be about whether Greece ought to stay in the European project and whether you believe in a future for Greece in Europe. And in fact, that's a small version of the question I think that Europe ought to be asking more generally. This has been about austerity plans, it's been about technical fixes to a financial crisis, but no one's articulating a bigger political vision of why this is important, why the European project is important. That's what's missing.
Jacques Millard, we've heard this criticism, for the past year, about the lack of political vision, the lack of political leadership, and we seem to be treading water.
You see, the crisis for me is very simple. It shows the limit of technocracy. When you are in Brussels, when you are in Frankfurt, especially with my friend Jean-Claude Trichet, you can say you should lead austerity, you should reduce your budget, etc., etc. But there is also people. And as you said earlier, if I do understand what has been said, that even the present Prime Minister, fears for his life. So it shows that Greece is at the brink of civil war. And that's the limit of the system. And I do understand that the Greeks have enough, but this is not only Greece. You will have the same thing tomorrow with Portugal, and maybe carry on with Spain. So I think we showed the limit of this Euro system. I always said that in one day or the other it will come to an end, and I think we show that today it's not working anymore. The only point is, do we save time? Do we, as it has been said, give to Greece the 8 billions, but tomorrow it will be more and more because they need a lot of money. It has been calculated that Germany should transfer about up to 3 or 4 points of gross national product to maintain the system. And I can understand that the Germans say, well, now it's enough. So I think that we show the limit of the entire system. And I do hope that my president, that the Kanzlerin, will realize that we have to sit down and say, do we do things differently or not? If we carry on this way, there is no solution.
Wait, so what are you saying in effect?
In the system, we are asking Portugal, Spain, Greece, tomorrow Italy, to reduce expenses, to reduce budget, to cut in social welfare, etc., etc. How many months do you think it will last? This is the point. This is a political issue. The point is that this single currency is strangling all, Eurozone economies.
Harold, how is it a bottomless pit?
Well, I mean, so far, I tend to disagree. Trichet's politics, while emphasizing budget constraints, was in fact loosening them. I mean, we have provided so much credit to the Greek economy. We have loosened budget constraints.
Greece has lost any competition.
Okay, but that's another issue. You were emphasizing the budget constraints.
But this is a consequence. The cause is competitiveness of the economy.
Well, I agree, but it was not the budget constraint. The budget constraints would have been much harder. It would have been much harder
without any help. I agree.
Right. Good. Then we.
Here's how Christian Adams, the political cartoonist for the Daily Telegraph, sees the problem for Greek politics on this Wednesday. There you see Papandreou heading towards the abyss, stopping for a pause, and then, taking the next leap forward. Le Monde's political editor, Arnaud Le Parmentier, quotes a French official as saying, "We can't prevent the Greeks from committing suicide. Better them than Angela Merkel." Ian Lesser. This does leave the Germans off the hook because they're no longer in the situation where they're going to have to be the ones to have to kick the Greeks out of the Eurozone if push comes to shove.
Well, maybe in that sense, but it doesn't at all let them off the hook in terms of being stakeholders in this. I mean, in a bigger sense, Germany has really been at the center of this. I have to go back to this point that I made earlier, which is that, this has been treated as a technical issue with technical fixes, austerity, no austerity, transfer union, no transfer union. The real issue is here, do you want to keep Europe together? What's required to do it? Is it in the national interest? There are global stakeholders in this too, obviously China, the United States, Brazil, everyone in a sense. On that question, Germany is at the center. So yes, in a narrow sense, perhaps it is Papandreou stepping off a cliff, but at the end of the day, it's also German, French, others' leadership.
And how much do they put on the table?
Well, they put a lot on the table.
Yeah, but for how long?
This is the question, because I quite agree with you. Publics, depending upon whatever their view, whatever their perspective, are coming to the end of the line here. This is beginning to threaten, cherished models of what society ought to be like. People are very angry.
George Prevaloukis, you made it clear in your first statement that you're not a big fan of George Papandreou. No. Nonetheless, what do you think when we sit around the table here and we talk about those feckless Greeks, those lazy tax dodgers? What do you think?
I cannot be something else than very sorry. First of all, because I belong to a generation that has lived with the dream of Europe. I was a student during the dictatorship, and we were. The European dream was our main motivation.
And 72% of the Greeks in a recent poll say they still believe in Europe.
Yes. So the first thing is that the debate is about Greece and Europe. It's not this. It's about the Greek government between Europe and Greece. What this government, and we are talking about austerity measures, etc. This is true, but this situation has been so badly mismanaged by the Papandreou government. For a series of reasons.
The previous ones also lied. They cooked the books. They lied.
This is the main ability of Papandreou is to disinform. And they have been disinforming against their opponents. They have created a very ugly image about the center-right government. It is not true. And if they failed, if the previous government failed, it is of course because they were weak, but it is also because the socialists have done everything so that they fail, so that they can come to government. Papandreou promised to win the elections that there is a lot of money. In order to get out of his contradiction, then he said it is a Titanic, and he provoked by that a financial crisis. It may be amusing to you, but sometimes he reminds me of Peter Sellers at the film The Party, going around smiling and creating disaster everywhere. And he has an extraordinary capacity. It's unfortunate.
But some people say that one of the arguments for this referendum and for perhaps snap elections, which will force the center-right to also be a little bit more responsible in terms of privatizations, which they reneged on.
This is again disinformation. This is again disinformation. The leader of the center-right, Mr. Samaras, that has been so much presented as a nationalist possibility. If you look at the facts, and the facts are hard-headed, everything he said has been proven right. His behavior has been extremely responsible. Do you know that he has excluded from the party the leader of the labor union of the taxi owners? Who has done that? He has stated, he has made a declaration towards the labor leaders, I don't want your votes because I'm going to be against you. But there has been so much disinformation because the main aim of Mr. Papandreou is to convince that I am bad, but the other are worse.
I can understand all, let's say, the internal policy and the internal situation, but the main fact is much simpler than that. Do you think that you can compete when you, I'm sorry to say it bluntly, when you sell olives, when you have the rural, the strength of Germany,
yes,
and you have
the
poor, how can you, when you have a currency which strangles you?
No,
I'm sorry,
No,
this is a fact. We have been told, I was sitting in the European delegation in national parliament when Mr. De Crissy came and said, every economies of the Eurozone are converting. This was not only a mistake, it was a lie, you see? And the fact is that you cannot really, when you have diverting economies, have a single policy because you cannot have a political
Ian Lesser, I just want to get...
Let me say just one word. Greek ship owners, the strongest ship owning community.
But that's the exception. That's the exception.
No, this is the Greek society and the Greek capacity without the state that is
solve
strangling.
The problem when will you put the rural complex in the Peloponnese field.
You have to also keep a little bit of historic perspective. Over the last 300 years, virtually every European country at some point defaulted. Germany in the 20th century, we defaulted twice.
Yes.
And France in the 18th century 3 times. So let's sort of try
Russia,
avoid to turn Crisia into the absolute black sheep, and as if this would be the end of Europe.
Course.
That's ridiculous as
agree.
well. To foresee now in a Greek default the end of the euro, that I think is shooting out of the hip.
The euro is not Europe.
We're going
to
get back to that point, just how big the knock-on effect will be when we return. You're watching the France 24 debate.